Well, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving President Ursula von der Leyen and Nomzamo Mbatha a huge round of applause. I am extremely honored today to be joined by two exceptional leaders who represent very different worlds, but both of whom are tireless advocates for global cooperation and climate ambition. Thank you so much for being here, to both of you. As we move from the momentum of the Financing for Development Summit in Seville towards the G20 Summit in South Africa later this year, this conversation will explore how to finance Africa's renewable future, a continent rich in natural resources with a huge opportunity for growth, but only if investments are implemented in the right place. President von der Leyen, last year at the G20 Summit in Rio, together with President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa, we launched Scaling Up Renewable Energy in Africa. This important campaign, and we talked about why this campaign is so important for the 600 million people who lack access to electricity on the continent. But this also represents an incredible opportunity for business, and this is something that you have championed so eloquently. Can you share with us why this is a huge opportunity for business?
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's wonderful to be again here with Global Citizens Now, and wonderful to see you again. Yes, the business case is very strong. I mean, if you look at the deployment of renewables, we estimate that the deployment of renewables will create 38 million new jobs in the next 5 years till 2030.
Wow.
And it's not only good for the planet to have clean energy, renewables. It's not only good, of course, for the people. It is also a very powerful engine for growth. And indeed, what is for us important is to convince that the renewable energy has the huge advantage that it's homegrown. So it creates good jobs at home. It gives you energy independence. It gives you energy security. You do not have to import the energy. And there is a very good business case, of course, also for it, where the different stakeholders play a role. First of all, very important is that we, the world, we have set ourselves targets. We've said we want to triple renewable energy till 2030. So there's a strong political will. Then, if you look at renewable energy, where is the continent with the best conditions? It's, of course, Africa. Sun in abundance, wind in abundance, geothermal, hydropower. It's all there. What is missing is the infrastructure to use this energy or to use these resources to transform it into energy. And there comes in now the third element, that is the public sector. The public sector can de-risk the investments of the business sector, and it can invest in skilling people that the business sector also needs. And it can create this, we call it the conducive environment for the business sector really to invest in it. And I brought along, I have to look at that, I brought along a few examples which I think are really good. We mobilized, for example, more than 4 billion euros for clean energy in South Africa.
Well done.
A new electricity interconnector between Zambia and Tanzania.
Wow.
And that's the point. You don't only need to develop the renewable energy, but you have to make sure that it goes where it is needed, so it spreads. And therefore, interconnectors and grids are extremely important. We're investing in a solar power plant with battery storage in the Ivory Coast. Here to another point, the clean energy is good, but you have to store it. At night, the sun is not shining. So an important project, and one that I like the most, is investing in a clean hydrogen plant in Namibia. It's a German and Namibian companies with initial German funding, and then the scale-up is funded by the European Union with Dutch money. So a perfect combination of public and private partnership at the best sense. So the question is not, should we invest in it? I think the question is, do we have the courage? Do we have the political vision to lead this transformation before others come in? And my answer is yes.
That's awesome. Let's give her a round of applause. That's extraordinary. So Nomzamo, coming from South Africa, and you're from KwaZulu-Natal, where I've had the privilege of spending quite a lot of time, and I've seen how the impact of load shedding and energy scarcity has a real impact on communities all across the country. As you think about what President von der Leyen said about transforming societies through access to renewable energy, can you give us a sense of what that means in real terms? How could this actually transform communities? What would it look like in KwaZulu-Natal and all across South Africa, for example?
You know, Hugh, thank you for that great question. The thing about energy insecurity is that it was thought to be the great equalizer, because with load shedding, it's affected in the suburbs, rural areas, urban areas, townships. But it's not, because in marginalized areas, people are disproportionately affected. And I love what Her Excellency was speaking about, because it speaks to what the President and the government of South Africa has actually enrolled already, which is called the Just Energy Transition. How do we transition a society that is heavily reliant on the fossil fuel industry, which is absolutely massive? It's been around for decades, heavily reliant. And not only because there's people who work on these coal mines, but also there's communities that live around them. So if we're saying that we're now moving away from fossil industries and we're going into cleaner and renewable energies, what does that mean for society? And that's why the JET transition and JET funding program is so important, because what it does is that it's sensitive to how communities are affected by it. It's to say that moving from fossil fuels doesn't mean that you're going to lose your job. It just means that with cleaner renewable energies, there's more opportunities. So to be able to have those conversations and to show that, you know, those who are affected by it, because there's health concerns, of course, it's to show that communities want to do better. But of course, we want to be able to scale up when it comes to a lot of employment. We want to scale up when it comes to skills development, so that when we're moving from the fossil fuel industry and we're moving into cleaner renewable energy, society is not left behind, especially those who are reliant on them. And you look at townships, there's so many young people who are continued to be left behind. There's so many women who are reliant on energy to keep a warm home, to keep a fed home. What does that look like for them? And so to be able to educate communities, not only who are affected by the mines, but also communities that are even in the rural areas or the outskirts or even the suburbs, what does that look like? And how can we make energy not only affordable, but accessible?
Thank you. Well said. Madam President, there's a lot of business leaders in the room today, and there's also a lot of business press and people tuning in around the world. What is your message to business leaders who want to be part of the renewable energy investment, and how can Team Europe partner with the business community to achieve that goal of tripling renewable energy access across the continent?
Thank you. It's all about partnership. It's all about coordination. So the different stakeholders have different things to bring in. And if I take your wonderful example of the JET, the Just Energy Transition, from coal to clean energy, where we can help, that is, first of all, that we are de-risking the investment of the business sector. So by guarantees, for example, or by blending, the investment of the private sector is necessary, but we are kind of backing it. And therefore, it's a de-risking of the investment. They can go for it. Second point.
So it's a huge leverage opportunity.
Indeed, it's enormous. And by joining forces, we have a much bigger impact than being on our own. Second point is indeed the conducive environment. So we work together, for example, with the South African government, but also with the local communities, as you've said. That's so important, because decades ago, the principle was someone comes in with the own workforce, exploits whatever is the critical raw material or the energy, and takes it back. And the added value is somewhere else. We want it differently. We have a big interest that the added value is locally, it creates jobs, and therefore, for example, the public sector can invest in The skills, the vocational training is extremely important, so that the local communities also are involved in the transition towards the clean technologies. All these are topics that are typical, the right thing for the public sector to support the private sector. At the beginning of a big project, I remember we were the ones, for example, who did the feasibility studies. They cost a lot of money, they are necessary.
Right.
The public sector does the feasibility study, and then the private sector comes in and says, yes, this is an investment that we want to do. This is a reason why, and I want to invite you all, why we do a Global Gateway Forum. Global Gateway is our program for investment abroad, 150 billion euros for Africa. And with the private sector, together with the banks, together with civil society, and of course, together with the business sector, we are developing these projects. And Global Gateway will have a forum on the 9th and 10th of October this year.
9th and 10th
where
of October.
Exactly, where we invite the heads of state and government of the European Union, the heads of state and government from Africa, but the business sector is important, the financing institutions, to take stock in our campaign, to look what went well, where's a lesson we have to learn, not to do the same mistake again. So really to work together, everybody has to bring its input. And then heading towards Johannesburg in November
You're
at
welcome.
G20. Yes, I'm very much looking forward. The big pledge, scaling up renewables for Africa.
So really, you've got a whole campaign architecture leading up to the huge moment in Johannesburg. Nomzamo, you have, and really building on what you shared about the potential of sustainable energy in townships and underserved communities. Your work off-screen has long focused on uplifting children and creating pathways for a much brighter future. When you think about long-term development opportunity, what does reliable energy access actually mean for communities and for the kids? This is the school that you helped build. I believe it's called the Dr. J.L. Dube High School. This is in KZN, right?
Well, Hugh, this is actually in Kakuma, refugee camp.
Oh, wow.
And that is the most excellent group of kids I've ever met in my entire life.
And tell me, when you think about what does it mean if they get access to electricity practically, to renewable energy, how is it going to transform their lives?
It's unbelievable. I mean, I think about myself, Hugh, as a young student who was in high school, and I remember particularly having to study with a candle because we didn't have electricity. Not because South Africa was going through an energy crisis back then, but it's because we could not simply afford it. So we've got to start with the affordability, the rising tariffs. It's still a huge factor that is affecting communities, not only in the townships of South Africa, but across the continent. So what are we going to do about that? You know, and you think about excellent young people who have to learn using a candle and working against those kinds of conditions. What kind of future are we building for them? So when you have access to renewable energy, when you understand why it's important, for a young person who's growing up on the continent, you want to be an active participant when it comes to building that kind of society that they want to live in the future. You know, I look at Dr. J.L. Dube, and we had to come up with durable solutions that are self-sustaining because we don't want to build systems that continue to rely on donorship. So what does it look like to build self-sustaining solutions so that people are not reliant on anything but are able to take care of it? We have to look at investment as well. When you get community investment, when people are actually invested in what you're building for them, they protect it, they nurture it, they make sure it lasts. And so those are the kinds of things when we are looking into communities, when we're building schools, we have to think around. We can't think around a generator, because a generator relies on something else, and that's not a self-sustaining solution. So what does solar power energy look like? What does clean, renewable energy look like?
You implement solar at your school?
Absolutely. Well done. We had to. We had to. And this was a 75 million rand investment, which is about a $3.5 million investment into that school. The kids don't even call it a school, they call it a campus. That's how much they love and nurture it. When it comes to the solar, when it comes to solar power, I remember the architects when they were having to put it up. no kid was going home because they were so fascinated by this. They wanted to see it be put up, and they say, show us, how is it done? So it's really, it motivates communities, it builds a sense of pride and inspiration and a strong sense of hope.
Wow, and that is a huge investment, so congratulations. I want to, yeah, I think that deserves a huge round of applause. Thank you, President von der Leyen. Thank you, Nomzamo, for your visionary leadership. You are both doing extraordinary work in championing the future of renewables across the continent. There is so much to be done, but you can count on everyone in this room and global citizens all around the world to join you in this movement that you're championing. So, ladies and gentlemen, please give them the biggest round of applause.
Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you.